What's going on, everybody? Well, The Fate of the Furious is in theaters this weekend, so what better time to give my ranking of the entire Fast and the Furious franchise. And what a wild franchise this is. I mean, one of the better franchises out there if you just like dumb action movies, especially a couple of them, but a fun franchise nonetheless. And if you had told me back in 2001 that this is going to be one of the biggest, most profitable franchises ever, I would have called you a liar. So it's just a crazy, wild, lightning in a bottle measure of success. But I guarantee you, my ranking is going to be a lot different than most people's. It's going to be pretty entertaining going through this. I've seen a lot of people's lists, and they seem to agree on the top one and the bottom one for the most part, but everything in between, everybody appreciates something different about this franchise. So it's a really cool franchise to rank. Starting off at number 8 is Too Fast, Too Furious. Now, I can still watch Too Fast, Too Furious and enjoy it as a really dumb, shut your brain off and just go along with it kind of movie, because this is like when they had the first one and Vin Diesel said he didn't want to come back because he wanted to go off and do his own serious action movies, and we all see how that worked out. They had to do something else. So they brought in Tyrese to give Paul Walker another friend. And although I like Tyrese, I like his character, their dynamic is not nearly as strong as it was between Paul Walker and Vin Diesel in the first one. The movie has a really strange kind of neon purple color palette to it where they try to make it real flashy. It goes a lot more over the top. It doesn't take itself nearly as serious, which, again, they kind of revert back to that in the later half of the franchise, but they do it a lot better. But the main thing that's weird about Too Fast, Too Furious for me, aside from the tone of it, is that Paul Walker does not act like the Paul Walker that we've seen in all the other Fast and the Furious movies in Too Fast, Too Furious. He's very street. You know, everything is, what up, cuh? Don't worry about it, cuh. Pockets ain't empty, cuh. And he never acts like that in any other Fast and the Furious movie. So if you watch this from the beginning, the first Fast and the Furious all the way through to Fate and the Furious, and take a lot of Advil because you're going to have a fucking headache, that's just such a weird chapter because it's just not the Brian that we know, and it always stands out to me. That and Cole Hauser's not that great of a villain in it, not that the whole franchise has great villains, but just a really weak villain. And I don't know, just something about Too Fast, Too Furious never meshes well with me. I could still enjoy it if I'm marathoning the franchise, but that's never the one that I'm going to go pick in and put in if I want to watch a Fast and the Furious movie. So, number 8, Too Fast, Too Furious. Number 7 is The Fate of the Furious, the one that we just got this weekend. Wasn't a huge fan of this movie, guys. I gave it see it on Netflix because, I mean, if you are a fan of this franchise, you could still go see The Fate of the Furious and have some dumb fun with it. You're not going to hate yourself for 2 hours, and you're not going to regret spending a little bit of money on it if you do go to the theaters, but definitely not worth going out, shelling out to spend the whole family out at the theater. Just check it out on Netflix if you can wait for it. Just a lot of things they did with this movie I didn't like, and it's already been heading that direction since Fast 5, so I kind of expected it getting a lot dumber and a lot more ridiculous, and they're almost superheroes now, but just the writing in this movie really bothered me. Not only with the story direction that we've already gone over a couple of times in this franchise with one of the family members straying off the beaten path, and we have to go bring them back to the good side, but you also have all these little twists and reveals that they try to put in that they telegraph way too much. And whenever they do reveal them, almost every single reveal just makes you go, wait, what? And it screws with the timeline of the movies. It makes you think too much about movies you're not supposed to think about. And it just makes you ask questions when you're supposed to be enjoying dumb action. And it doesn't work at all for me. I hated how they brought Statham back and made him part of the group. Even though I love Statham and I like his character, and they use him better as an actor in this, he killed Han, and yet he's hanging out with all these guys, and they just accept him as one of their own within like 5 minutes, and it makes no sense whatsoever. So many things that I didn't appreciate about The Fate of the Furious. That's number 7. Number 6 is Furious 7. Now, this is actually the highest grossing one in the entire franchise, probably because of Paul Walker's death, and I'll give credit where credit's due. James Wan, for what he had to work with the unfortunate death of Paul Walker, I don't even think halfway through the shooting of this movie, Furious 7 is damn good for what he had to work with, but it's still not a very good movie in my opinion. I don't see James Wan anywhere on this movie. Same with The Fate of the Furious. I didn't see F. Gary Gray anywhere in that one, but with Furious 7, with James Wan attached, I was thinking, wow, this is going to be a darker chapter. It's going to be grittier. It's going to be a little bit more grounded. He'll probably dial it back a bit from the craziness of Fast and Furious 6, and it was the exact opposite of what I was expecting. They basically must have told James Wan, make this movie look exactly like Justin Lin directed it without having Justin Lin here tell you what to do. And it feels like they took Fast 5, then they ramped it up for Fast and Furious 6, Justin Lin left, and then James Wan came in and they said, okay, now skyrocket the stupid shit. I mean, that scene whenever the car is going between the skyscrapers, I mean, that's probably one of the worst scenes in this entire franchise as far as just stupidity. It's like, you really had to throw that in there. But just aside from that, I mean, unfortunately, yes, they had to do a lot of reworking with Paul Walker, so some of the story beats and some of the stuff in there doesn't quite mesh well. The biggest thing I was expecting with this, as far as a story that they didn't quite deliver in, was Statham's character, because I was expecting Statham to be just like this badass villain that was going to give them a run for their money, and he just kind of shows up and messes with them here and there. He's like the Winter Soldier. He just kind of shows up, does a few things, and then they move on. You didn't really get this huge epic clash with him, like literally trying to murder these people like the end of Fast and the Furious 6 made you think it was going to do. So I was a little disappointed with that, but in the end, it was still an enjoyable movie, and like I said, for what they had to work with, turned out very well. But nonetheless, that's my number 6. Number 5 is a movie that is often people's number 8 or just above that on number 7, but I actually like it quite a bit, and that's the Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift. I don't even think this one went to theaters. I think it was a straight-to-DVD one, so this was kind of like the sign of this franchise being dead. I mean, what a joke that is, right? And I just like that this one is so different. As far as like the racing side of this franchise back in the early days, I think the racing in Tokyo Drift, bar none, looks better than any of the other movies that focused on the racing. The whole drift concept, they're shot really well, and this was Justin Lin's first stab at the Fast and the Furious franchise, and he's kind of the one that made it what it is today. I like Lucas Black a lot. I know a lot of people don't, because they're like, where's Dom? Where's Brian? And I like Lucas Black because I grew up watching him in certain things in the 90s, like American Gothic and a lot of Disney movies. So I liked seeing him do something. I liked his character, especially the beginning. As far as race scenes, I think the best race scene that we've ever seen, and I'd have to rewatch this before I really say it and solidify my opinion in that, but one of the more memorable race scenes, I'll put it that way, is the opening one whenever he's racing that dickhead from high school and they're going through the construction site. Even though they're destroying so many houses, it's a really cool racing scene, and it's very somewhat realistic. It's not over the top like you get from 4 going onward. So I liked that. I liked Han. Han's one of the best characters in this franchise, and this was the one that really introduced us to Han. So that whole concept of Han kind of being a mentor, but also kind of having a little bit of a gangster edge to him, like when he tells him, don't leave town. I like his character a lot, and there's just a lot of things to Tokyo Drift that I always enjoy when I watch it. In the end, it is kind of a useless installment in this franchise, because aside from Han's death and the one little ridiculous scene in Furious 7 where Lucas Black looks like he's about 45, and they go in and have that one little 5-minute discussion just to tie it in and show you where in the timeline Tokyo Drift actually lies, it is kind of a useless part of the franchise, but I enjoy it for what it is, and I will watch that one before I watch the 3 that are underneath it. I enjoy it more. So Tokyo Drift is my number 5. Number 4 is the Fast and the Furious 6. Now this was the one after Fast 5 where I was like, I don't know what direction they're going to take this. Is it going to go even more ridiculous? Are they going to tone it back a little bit? What are they going to do? And Fast and the Furious 6 went a little bit more ridiculous. It was a little bit more of an ensemble movie. Even after Fast 5 was an ensemble movie, they started throwing in everybody. You got Luke Evans, you got Gina Carano, and of course they're bringing back Letty in this weird storyline. That's started kind of the stupidity of the storylines in this, where you just have to kind of accept it and move on, where she's dead, but she's not really dead, but she had amnesia. So that whole thing went in there. But there's a lot of really great things about Fast and Furious 6. You get a lot of the same team dynamic you got in Fast 5. You got The Rock back. It's the first one where they're kind of being used, the team being used for good. And this is kind of like their redemption chapter where they start to work towards getting their spot back to go back home. And I like that aspect of the story. Like, this is bringing everything full circle. We've done this for you. We outsmarted you in Fast 5. Now you need us for The Rock's character, and we're going to help you, but we get to go home at the end. And I like that journey we go on in Fast and the Furious 6. There's a lot of great fight scenes. I love the fight scene with Tyrese and Han fighting the one guy, and they get their asses kicked. The whole sequence on the longest runway known to man at the end is really cool. And this is one of the few chapters where they actually have some death in it, and it really does hit you when it happens. So Fast and the Furious 6 is really enjoyable. It's a good installment in the franchise. And that was whenever it just started to teeter on the edge of going too stupid, especially with the Superman save, whenever he goes across the highway and catches Letty and hits a fucking car. That's where it starts to teeter over the edge, but it was just starting to teeter over. So I still enjoy this movie a lot. That's my number 4. Number 3 is the original The Fast and the Furious. Now again, a lot of people put this lower on the list, especially after we've gotten 5 until now. People like that whole half of the franchise better for the most part. But there's something about the original Fast and the Furious that still sticks with me. It was never one of my favorite movies growing up, but as I've kind of gained to really like this franchise, from really Fast and Furious is what kind of grabbed me a little bit more, and then Fast 5 solidified it, and going onward, I still go back and I enjoy the sparking point of the Fast and the Furious. Yes, it's a complete Point Break ripoff that they will not admit is a Point Break ripoff. Maybe that's why I like it, because I love Point Break, but I like the dynamic between Dom and Brian. I like the racing sides of it. I like a lot of the lore, if you can call it that they set up in this with, calling him Buster, and if you reach first to get the food, you gotta say grace. Just all those little subtle things that seemed irrelevant when you first saw the movie, but now is really important if you're a fan of the franchise later on. I just like that, and I will go back and watch The Fast and the Furious quite a bit. I've always liked this movie, but as the franchise has gone on, I've grown to really appreciate it a lot more, so that's my number 3. Number 2 is Fast and Furious. Again, another movie I see really low on a lot of people's lists. This is the one that got the team back together. This is when Paul Walker came back. This is when Vin Diesel came back. And then you had Michelle Rodriguez in it for a little bit. And then you had Jordana Brewster. It was getting all the parts back together. I think the tagline was new vehicle, old parts, or something like that. And I really liked that. I liked how they took it and they really brought this franchise back to life with Fast and Furious. It had a lot of the flavor of the older movies while giving us a lot of new flavor that we come to expect with the Fast and Furious franchise now. It's a really cool middle chapter. And maybe that's why people don't like it, because it's either you're on one side or the other and the middle is just too weird for them. But I actually like that little bit of a bridge that they had there. I like the action sequences. The opening action sequence with them stealing those gas trucks was awesome. I like the racing in this. I love the dynamic of Brian coming back and having to confront Dom, and them kind of having to rekindle that respect and friendship again when they kind of are against each other at first. I like the whole aspect of Letty being dead, because that kind of gives it more of a human element that we didn't have in the first 3. And I really liked the ending. The ending is probably my favorite part. Fast and the Furious, the ending, whenever Dom is going off and he's been imprisoned and that's over, and all of a sudden you see in the distance those 3 cars coming and Brian's leading them with his with Dom's car, and they're about to kick ass, and the movie just cuts off. What a great way to end it and make you excited for another Fast and the Furious movie. It's one of the better endings in this franchise to me. So I've always liked Fast and the Furious. That's one that I will put on as a precursor for when I watch Fast 5. That's kind of the way I marathon them. If I'm in the mood for a Fast and the Furious movie, I'll watch those 2. But I really like Fast and Furious. That's my number 2. My number 1, of course, is Fast 5. Fast 5 is, bar none, the best installment of this entire franchise. It's one of the best action movies to come out in years. It still is one of the best action movies in years. I would put it in my top 10 at least for the past 10, 15 years. It's that good. They took what they got in Fast and Furious, they got everybody interested again, they got all the team back together, and they said, let's go for broke. Let's put The Rock in here in one of The Rock's greatest roles, and when he's used the best in this franchise as an antagonistic character for our family, and let's just do a badass old school action movie. We'll do some really over-the-top shit to please the fans, but let's just make it gritty, let's make it grounded, and let's have fun with it. And that's what they did with Fast 5, and it was so awesome. You got a lot of storyline that was left over from Fast and the Furious, the first one that got tailed off. You got a lot of things that were just kind of projected going forward in the franchise, like the little reintroduction of Letty and the little post-credits stinger. The introduction of The Rock, which, had they not turned him into the damn superhero that he is in the later movies, was one of the best shots in the arm that this franchise has got, because Dom versus The Rock is one of the best fight scenes that I've seen in years. Like, that fight scene always sticks with me. That's one of the best parts of this movie, and it's shot so well. That was when Justin Lin solidified himself as a force to be reckoned with in Hollywood. And there's not really a whole lot of racing in this one. This is when it kind of turned into more of a heist film, but that worked to the franchise's advantage because the racing thing could only go on for so long, and that really gave a good spin, and it made total sense with the story of these characters that just, it worked. Everything about Fast 5 worked. And I love it so much. That's why some of the other installments that have come after that has disappointed me so much, because what they nailed in Fast 5, to me, they just decided to replace what they couldn't match in further sequels with more ridiculous action. And they keep taking it up, and just ramping it up to 11, 12, 13, 14. And I just miss the Fast Five feel. I miss the, yes, somewhat ridiculous, but still somewhat grounded action scenes. I miss the dynamic of the family. I miss The Rock being against them. I don't really like him being a part of the crew. I don't know why. I know he's a good guy, and I know technically they're good guys now, but I miss that antagonistic relationship, and I didn't get it in Fate of the Furious either. So, you know, just everything about Fast Five I love. It's one of my favorite action movies. It's bar none my favorite Fast and the Furious movie, and that is my number one. So what do you guys think about my ranking of the Fast and Furious franchise? Put your own ranking down below. Like I said, everybody appreciates different things about this franchise, so I'm sure all of you will have a different ranking than me. Put it down in the comment section below, guys, and we'll talk about your rankings. Please like and share this video and hit that subscribe button. That way you get to come back and see me next time. And click over here to check out my review and spoiler talk after the rating of the Fate of the Furious. And put your thoughts on the Fate of the Furious down in the comment section below here as well, because I'd love to hear what you guys think about this newest installment. But go ahead and click that subscribe button, and if you want to check out those videos, you can check them out by clicking right over here.